So we're looking at today's Heard on the Street column from Rolfe Winkler, looking at Tim Cook trying to shape a new era at Apple. So Rolfe, this morning, wonderful story about what's going on, all these changes we've seen at Apple. What's the latest on what Mr. Cook is doing?
The best story was written by our Jessica Lesson, who really kind of broke the news that the straw that broke the camel's back. We're talking about Scott Forstall, who had been the senior vice president in charge of iOS, which is the mobile operating system for Apple. There had been some issues with him, conflicts with other top executives that in the past Steve Jobs had been able to referee, but that kind of had broken out more in the open after the death of Mr. Jobs. And kind of one of the last straws. There had been issues with iOS. There was Siri. There was the Maps mess up. Of course, Apple Maps is nowhere near as good as Google Maps, but it's on the iPhone. Anyway, point is, Jessica's very good story had broken the news that he had refused to sign an apology over that Maps fiasco to customers. Tim Cook ended up putting out a letter that he signed apologizing, and that was really, according to Jessica's great story, that was really the last straw for him.
So is this, I mean, as these changes that we're seeing, is this about people, or is this about products, or is it the sort of marriage of both?
I think it's a little bit about both, and the interesting thing is who's being elevated. So a few people obviously are getting new responsibilities, but one in particular that's notable is Johnny Ive. This is the guy who's really responsible for really the really magnificent hardware that Apple delivers. So one thing you just can't doubt is, you know, the iPhone 5 is very sturdy and remarkably thin. I mean, just holding it in your hand it's pretty impressive. The MacBook Air, for instance, I mean, this is a machine that has totally rewritten what laptops can do in terms of speed and weight. I mean, it's just a much lighter, faster device. He is now going to be taking charge of what's called human interface, which means the way that software, desktop software, mobile software, Apple software is displayed on your screen is also going to be under him. So he's going to be able to design that as well. And so, there's actually some interesting things going on there.
So if I'm a customer and I look at this, I mean, these people that they're bringing up these are through the ranks. I mean, it's not like they're bringing someone from an outside firm to take it.
Yeah. Johnny Ive's been with the company since, oh boy, I want to say the early 90s. He's been there for, or it may have been 90s. He's been there since the 90s for sure. Now, the one interesting thing here is under Scott Forstall, there's been some disappointment about how maybe there were some superfluous visual flourishes in a lot of Apple's apps, like on the new Passbook app that holds your movie tickets, your airline tickets. When you delete something, it brings up a paper shredder. And a lot of people, designers, have complained, well, that's almost superfluous because people don't really use paper shredders. Kids today who have iPhones, they don't. I mean, it's more. You don't need that. They rather
probably took years to create
on function as opposed to kind of those visual flourishes. And but I guess for me the interesting thing is whether Apple's going to push it even farther than just kind of redesigning the look. I mean, what you have to. The backdrop here is that Apple has actually, in my view, fallen behind. In particular, Microsoft. I'm going to get a lot of hate mail from the fanboys for saying this. I did on this column, but Microsoft, if you actually go and use Windows 8 on, say, a Surface tablet, you can check it out in Times Square, for instance, you can keep two apps displayed on your screen at the same time. You know, with an iPhone or an iPad, you have to hit the home button, go back and forth. Here, for instance, with Microsoft, I can have Skype open while I'm surfing the internet, for instance, or my email and my calendar, both next to each other. I mean, that's one simple thing. The live tiles on the home screen display information. You don't have to open up the weather app. You don't have to open up your email app to see your new messages.
You within the company that will sort of usher in potentially more?
I hope they do. I don't think that they were designed to do that. I don't think Apple is trying to hit back at Microsoft or would even acknowledge that Microsoft has moved ahead of them. I'm sure they would say that's nonsense. But that's my personal opinion, and my hope is that, and I think they're smart, that they see where some of the computing innovation is going, and Johnny Ive's a very, very smart guy and a very, very good designer. So it's my hope for, you know, as an Apple customer that, and for Apple shareholders, that they can push that envelope farther than they have.
Terrific. Well, Rolfe, thank you for joining us. Make sure to read more of Rolfe's columns in the Heard on the Street column on the Wall Street Journal, and every morning at 8:30 on the Morning News Hub.